When we study the history of warfare, we observe a constant evolution of the battlefield. We move from the physical clash of swords to the ballistic trajectory of artillery, and finally into the invisible binary realm of cyber warfare. In the landscape of modern pop culture, the exact same evolution has occurred. For decades, the rap beef was a purely lyrical combat sport. It was waged in recording booths, on mixtapes, and on radio freestyles. It was about who had the better flow, the sharper pen, the most devastating character assassination. But in May of 2026, the paradigm shift fundamentally in another direction. The battlefield was no longer the microphone, the battlefield was the infrastructure of the internet itself. We are going to dissect an event known within the music industry as the May 2026 scrub. This was the moment when Kendrick Lamar took a conflict that had already defined a generation and escalated it into an act of digital sabotage. He didn't just drop a diss track, he weaponized the back-end code of the global streaming apparatus. He engaged in algorithmic warfare by intentionally deleting, manipulating, and restoring his own historically significant digital catalog. Lamar executed a scorched earth tactical maneuver designed to completely suffocate the release of his rival's highly anticipated album. This is not just a story about two musicians who hate each other. This is a forensic analysis of how cultural icons realize that true power no longer lies in creating content, but in controlling the algorithm that distributes it. To understand the sheer magnitude of the May 2026 scrub, we have to look at the geopolitical landscape of the music industry leading up to that week. This war between Kendrick Lamar and Drake began in 2024 and was already the stuff of legend. It was a deeply acrimonious, immensely personal feud that ended with Lamar effectively achieving a cultural victory, cemented by the monstrous success of his 2024 album, GNX, and the inescapable anthem Not Like Us. But the fallout of that war had spilled over from the culture into the federal court system. By spring of 2026, the shadow of high-stakes litigation was looming over the entire industry. Drake was actively engaged in an appellate battle in the Second Circuit, suing UMG for defamation based on lyrical content Lamar had released under their banner. The tension was palpable. The industry was holding its breath because Drake was finally preparing his counteroffensive. On May 15, 2026, Drake was scheduled to release his 9th studio album titled Iceman. This was designed to be his grand return, his reclamation of the throne, a massive commercial juggernaut meant to wash away the stains of 2024. The rollout for Iceman was meticulously planned. Millions of dollars were poured into marketing, playlist placements, and algorithmic priming. The digital runway cleared for Drake to dominate the global conversation. But Kendrick Lamar, sitting in silence, understood a fundamental truth about the digital attention economy. The algorithm is a zero-sum game. If you want to destroy a man's digital footprint, you don't have to attack him directly. You just have to create a black hole so massive that not even his light can escape it. The disruption began precisely 4 days before Iceman was set to drop. On May 11, 2026, the digital music supply chain experienced a sudden, unannounced shockwave. Across major digital service providers like Spotify and Apple Music, core assets of Kendrick Lamar's catalog simply vanished. His Grammy-winning GNX was gone. The standalone diss track Euphoria was gone. But the most scrutinized and dramatic element of the disruption occurred on YouTube. The official music video for Luther, featuring SZA, and the crown jewel of the 2024 war, Not Like Us, were abruptly taken offline. The cultural magnitude of this specific takedown cannot be overstated. At the precise moment it was removed, the Not Like Us visual asset had amassed over 467 million verified views. It wasn't just a music video, it was a cultural monument. It was a digital artifact that generated daily traffic. When a video of that scale disappears, the industry immediately assumes a catastrophic error. The initial theories were frantic. Was it a cyber attack? Was it a legal injunction related to the UMG defamation lawsuit? Did a rogue Universal executive pull the plug in a panic? The internet exploded in conspiracy theories. Drake's impending album release was completely eclipsed by the mystery of Kendrick's vanishing catalog. The silence was deafening, and it was entirely consuming the global cultural bandwidth. But forensic indicators surrounding the YouTube removal revealed something far more chilling than a hack or a legal dispute. When audiences attempted to load the URLs for the deleted videos, the YouTube player generated a distinct, highly specific error state. Video unavailable. This video has been removed by the uploader. Within YouTube's content management system infrastructure, this specific alphanumeric string is hard-coded. It is not an accident. It definitively proves a deliberate, manual action executed by an internal channel administrator possessing direct credentials to Lamar's verified account. This phrasing completely rules out an automated Content ID strike. It rules out an external Digital Millennium Copyright Act takedown notice. It rules out platform-level censorship. All of those external actions trigger entirely different, legally specific error messages. This was the smoking gun. Kendrick Lamar, or someone in his absolute inner circle with the master passwords, had manually pressed the delete button on a 467 million view video. He intentionally wiped his own masterpiece off the face of the internet just 4 days before his enemy's release. It was an act of digital self-mutilation, but it was executed with the cold precision of military strikes. The question immediately shifted from who did this to why. The answer lies in the mechanics of the zero-view reset and the weaponization of algorithmic gravity. The modern digital music ecosystem relies on a complex, highly synchronized infrastructure of recommendation engines. The YouTube algorithm is designed to feed users what is currently generating the most momentum, engagement, and shock value. When you leave a 467 million view video online, it generates a steady, predictable baseline of traffic. It is a known quantity. But when you delete it, and the entire world starts searching for it, you create a massive data void. Search queries for Kendrick Lamar, Not Like Us, and Where is GNX skyrocketed into the millions. The algorithm began frantically searching for data that didn't exist. Kendrick had effectively starved the algorithm. He created a vacuum. And in the digital attention economy, a vacuum is the most powerful force in the universe. By removing his most popular assets, he forced the entire global music media to stop talking about Drake's Iceman and start investigating Kendrick Lamar's disappearance. He hijacked the news cycle without saying a single word, without spending a single dollar on marketing, and without releasing a single new piece of music. He weaponized his own absence. But the true genius of the May 2026 scrub wasn't the deletion, it was the restoration. Over a 48-hour window, the assets began to reappear, but they didn't just quietly slip back into the servers. They returned right as the digital runway was supposed to be clear for Drake's release. When a massive asset like Not Like Us is restored after a high-profile deletion, the algorithm treats it as a hyper-viral new event. The millions of people who had been searching for it frantically over the last 48 hours immediately flooded the reactivated links. This triggered an algorithmic tsunami. The recommendation engine saw a massive, instantaneous spike in engagement on the Kendrick Lamar assets and immediately began pushing them to the top of every feed, every trending page, every up next queue across the globe. This is the digital equivalent of an ambush. Just as Drake was attempting to launch Iceman into the cultural atmosphere, Kendrick Lamar unleashed an artificial algorithmic tidal wave that completely swamped the launchpad. Drake's marketing team was spending millions to get the algorithm to care about Iceman, while Kendrick Lamar had tricked the algorithm into hyperfixating on 2-year-old songs simply by turning them off and turning them back on again. This maneuver represents a terrifying evolution in how artists wage war. Kendrick Lamar recognized that we no longer consume music, we consume data. And if you understand how the data supply chain works, you can choke out your competition before they even reach the consumer. Drake was fighting a traditional war. He was recording an album, relying on an album rollout, doing the standard promotional dance, and hoping the music would speak for itself. He was playing by the rules of 2010s. Kendrick Lamar was playing by the rules of 2026. He realized the ultimate diss track isn't a song, it's the systematic suppression of your opponent's data. By manipulating his own metadata and playing a shell game with his own catalog, Kendrick forced Drake to launch his highly anticipated comeback album directly into the teeth of a viral media storm focused entirely on the man who defeated him 2 years prior. It was a psychological masterstroke. It told Drake and the entire music industry I don't need to write a new song to destroy your release week. I just need my admin password. The fallout from the May 2026 scrub is still fundamentally altering the music industry. It exposed a massive vulnerability in the digital supply chain. DSPs and platforms like YouTube realized that their multi-billion-dollar algorithms could be easily manipulated, hijacked, and weaponized by an artist with enough cultural capital and the willingness to risk their own digital assets. It also demonstrated that the perceived permanence of the digital age is an absolute illusion. We believe that once a video hits 400 million views, it is etched into the cultural bedrock, but it is just a string of code sitting on a server. It can vanish in a keystroke. Kendrick Lamar proved that the true power in the modern era doesn't belong to the artist who creates the most content. The true power belongs to the artist who holds the leverage to threaten the infrastructure itself. He didn't just beat Drake lyrically, he beat the machine that Drake relies on to exist. We've reached the end of the show, and it's time for final thoughts. When we look back at the May 2026 scrub, the temptation is to view it strictly as the ultimate petty climax of a rap beef. It's easy to frame it as two incredibly wealthy, highly egotistical men fighting over the cultural crown, using billion-dollar tech platforms as their personal playthings, and on one level, that is exactly what it is. But if you look at the deeper mechanics of what Kendrick Lamar actually accomplished, it reveals a terrifying truth about the world we all live in. We exist in a society that is entirely mediated by algorithms. What we watch, what we listen to, what news we read, and ultimately, what we care about. It is dictated by a machine that is constantly hungering for engagement. Kendrick Lamar didn't hack the code. He hacked human psychology. He understood in a world drowning in content, the most shocking, attention-grabbing thing you can possibly do is take something away. He weaponized our own collective FOMO, our fear of missing out. He knew that the moment a piece of culture vanished, we would obsess over it infinitely more than if it had just stayed online. This is a stark reminder that the digital platforms we rely on for our culture, our memories, and our history are not public squares. They are private servers, and they are completely vulnerable to manipulation by anyone who understands how the pipes are connected. We are all living downstream from the algorithm, assuming the water will always flow. But Kendrick Lamar proved that whoever has their hand on the valve controls the entire river. Pay attention to what the algorithm feeds you, and pay even closer attention to what it suddenly stops feeding you. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.